I reckon we ought to get going with this chapter. Get some French fried taters then.
Hello, everybody. I'm still laughing about trying to do that voice. I think I'm getting a little verklempt. Getting a little scratchy throat from that. If you've never seen that movie, Sling Blade, oh my goodness. One of the masterpieces that we have. Watch it. Since we really have nothing else to do, we might as well watch it. So, okay, continuing on. We got chapter number 14 here with exercise prescription for flexibility and low back functioning. It's a really short chapter. I mean, a really short chapter. So we're just looking at core stabilities, maybe some common exercises that we are performing or could perform to be able to strengthen the core, strengthen the lower back potentially. I mean, there's a lot of different exercises we could perform, but we're really looking at the ones that are common and also looking at stretching and some common stretches. Now, if you know anything about me, I will say that stretching sometimes can be a little overrated, but it's not completely useless. There is a reason to do it in certain circumstances, and it is still beneficial. Strength training can help increase flexibility as long as, and I mentioned this in the PowerPoint, as you'll see, because I'm recording this after I did it, is that it will increase flexibility as long as the full range of motion is performed and the proper form is performed. So those are the two important keys to that, but not to say that stretching cannot be beneficial. Stretching itself, the static type of stretching that we are used to seeing, can still be beneficial, but for maximal force capabilities, it's definitely not the best. Now, especially if you're wanting to perform a really high power output exercise immediately after or in a certain time point, that stretching could actually diminish the amount of force that's able to be produced. However, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. Squirrel! Getting a little sidetracked, but what I'm trying to say is stretching is still beneficial, still important. And some of these exercises that we'll see are also for core stability. So they're just not for stretching. They're not just for do them if you want to, if you like them, which you can do that as well. They do have a purpose. Core stability is one of the main ones here. We also go into at least 3 different common stretches that really aren't that good to do. That could actually induce some pain in certain joints. So you'll see those throughout the PowerPoint, actually towards the end, and then maybe some beneficial ones as well. So enjoy the chapter. Chapter 14, Exercise Prescription for Flexibility and Low Back Function. Here we go. Okay, we're going to look at core stability first. So looking at the trunk being the spinal and the abdominal area. So the musculature stabilizes the core. And that's kind of an important aspect to understand, is that once the core is strong and you build the core up, it can maintain that good posture throughout the day while you're just walking around, while you're sitting in a chair, or even while you're doing any type of physical activity. It can help keep the spine and the lumbar region straight, and also the back just in general straight. And it helps to strengthen the ability to maintain good posture throughout the day. Now, this does enhance athletic performance, as well as any type of work-related activities do tend to be enhanced at least a little bit. The performance goes up. The amount of low back pain that could potentially happen and be developed is lower. And this is due to the fact that you're able to control the forces, those deleterious forces that are being applied to the body, and you're able to counteract that much more efficiently and do so with strong muscles. And those muscles are able to get the body back into balance. Say you get off balance a little bit here and there, and you're able to protect the spinal region and the structures within the spine and not putting a lot of stress on those joints within the spine, the intervertebral discs. So looking at some abdominal exercises for the core stability. So stabilization exercises engage both the local stabilizers as well as the global musculature within the core. And even throughout the body. Some of these exercises are just good body exercises. So these exercises are a lot of times performed on unstable bases, such as a Swiss ball or a foam roller. And they also provide for a pretty good challenge to maintain not only posture, but also balance while you're standing on these or sitting on them. So a couple examples of some balance exercises. On page 301 and 302, it goes through a whole list and it demonstrates, at least from a picture standpoint, some of these exercises that you can perform. This is on table 14.2. So standing on one leg is a good balance exercise. And here's one where you're using a medicine ball, or not necessarily a medicine ball, but like a Swiss ball. And this individual is actually putting one foot off of the ground. So again, maintaining that balance while they're on that ball. And also a hip raise, in which you're basically providing a lever system in this case, where the knees are on the ground and the elbow is also on the ground and the arm all on the ground to provide some support, and just maintaining this straight spine in this exercise. So again, there's a lot of different exercises you can perform with these Swiss balls, or just being a little bit creative from this. And planks are also another good example of these types of stability exercises, especially for the core. Recommendations for the guidelines that ACSM has put out for flexibility. So doing some of these stability and flexibility techniques and exercises 2 to 3 days per week, roughly 10 minutes, depending upon what the exercises are and how long they do take, and then 15 minutes per stretch, about 3 to 5 times for each of these. Now, they can either be passive or they can be active. And passive meaning that you're just allowing the body or allowing that joint and that muscle to stretch, or you're trying to maybe force it just a little bit to where you're going a little bit past the comfort zone, essentially. Now, you don't want to be in pain. Putting too much pain on it could actually be a result of going too far, but you shouldn't go too much past normal range of motion. Now, there's going to be a normal range of motion within each specific joint, and you don't want to go past that. Going past that could put undue stress on not only the muscles, but also the joints themselves and the ligaments and the soft tissue within those joints. Okay, going into some stretching techniques. So you have static stretching. Static stretching is you're just holding that position for a certain period of time. Might be 5 seconds, could be 10 seconds, could be 20 seconds, 30 seconds, however long it might be. And then you're going to have an active stretch where you're basically trying to, not necessarily force, but you're stretching a little bit more and trying to really stretch those muscles. And then you have the passive stretch, which is just allowing those muscles to stretch on their own, basically, depending upon what the type of exercise it is. It might be a little more easy to allow for passive stretch. You have ballistic stretching, which is generally not recommended. Ballistic stretching is like a bouncing type of stretch in which there could be undue stress on not only the joints, but the muscles themselves, and it could cause some injury. Now, a dynamic stretch is moving while you're actually stretching. Now, this doesn't include like bouncing, like ballistic stretching or anything like that, and you're not going past the normal range of motion. An example of this would be like arm circles or maybe even lunges. So you're somewhat exaggerating certain movements, but you're also moving at the same time. You're just not allowing a stretch to happen. You are actually moving, contracting the muscles, and maybe looking at mimicking a certain activity with that stretch. So a lot of times runners, for like a dynamic stretch, they might do a lunge or maybe at least an over exaggerated step down the track or wherever it might be. Now, PNF stretching, or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, this is actually looking at contraction and relaxation of the muscles to allow for certain stretches. A lot of times this is performed in clinical settings, and there's usually somebody that's assisting or helping in this case, but not always. Continuing on with stretching techniques. So a flexibility program should target all major muscle groups. It shouldn't just be one specific area or region of the body, or maybe one specific muscle. Now, there might be certain areas where an individual might be lacking in flexibility and maybe focus on some of those areas, but a good, well-rounded flexibility program should target all muscle groups. Now, keep in mind that stretching isn't the only factor here. Just stretching and just performing these exercises is good, but keep in mind that something like a good strength training program is also going to provide good flexibility as long as the exercises are performed throughout the full range of motion and correct form. So again, the stretch position, it should not have any pain involved. Now, it might be a little bit of discomfort that is involved with it, depending upon the muscle and maybe how tight the muscles are, but there shouldn't be any really severe pain in these stretches. Now, some stretches that are now recommended that you should avoid, and these used to be common stretches. In fact, they're still common. A lot of people still perform these stretches, although they are not recommended now. So 3 of them are the standing toe touch. So basically just standing up and reaching down and touching your toes. Now, the reason that this is now seen as a poor stretching exercise is that this could induce a little bit of low back pain and could cause some issues down the road if performed too much or performed incorrectly. The hurdler stretch is one where you have your leg back, and we'll see a picture of these 3 here in a second. The leg being back, and I've seen it a couple different ways where the individual will reach forward and stretch that way and also maybe lay back. This puts a lot of stress and strain on the knee joint. And then the full circle neck stretch. Full circle neck stretch is just like what it sounds. It is a neck stretch where the individual is circling their neck around and trying to stretch it out 360 degrees, basically. So let's look at a couple of these. So a common toe touch, again, could put a little bit of extra stress and strain on the lower back. Again, sometimes this depends upon the individual. If performed correctly, it might not be that detrimental, but there are other exercises that may be more beneficial. The hurdler stretch, again, the leg is back. Now, I've seen it where they have been laying backwards and also reaching forward with this stretch. But again, it could put a little bit of extra stress and strain on the knee joint. And then the full circle neck stretch. So this individual will basically take their head and twist it around and around, not actually twisting it around like in maybe a movie that you may have watched and being twisted the whole way around, but they're actually circling their head around and trying to stretch out all the muscles. This puts a little bit of strain on some of those muscles in the neck and actually cause a little bit of discomfort. Alternative core stability and flexibility training. Some of these you may have done before. Any type of Pilates, any yoga, Tai Chi, and also aquatic exercises and routines can be really good for the core, as well as any type of flexibility training. And these exercises do tend to be a little bit lower stress on certain joints, especially the aquatics. The aquatics exercises are low stress, low strain on most of the joints. And especially somebody who maybe has joint problems, this is going to be a very, very good way of limiting the amount of pain and stress being placed on those joints, but at the same time, getting good core exercises involved in their routine, as well as some physical activity throughout the day as well. And it can also be fun. Well, that was chapter number 14. Number 14 was a really short chapter. So exercise prescription for flexibility and low back functioning. And I will see you in a second. Is it working? I don't know. It might be working. I know it's starting to strain my neck a little bit doing that. Some of those exercises, some of the stretching exercises, at least the 3 of them, the 3 common ones that we had, three common ones that we had, maybe not so good. In fact, that little bit of just twirling my neck around a little bit, it starts to hurt a little bit after a while. So that's the reason why it's not as popular as what it once was, is because it's probably not as beneficial as what we once thought. And if it's inducing maybe more pain and more discomfort than it's actually helping you, then what's the point of doing it? Even though there might be a little bit of benefit from it, there's other exercises, other ways to stretch maybe that part of the body out. So we had a lot of different exercises for the stretching and also the core, and you can look in the textbook. There's a bunch of different ones. In fact, there's pages of them in tables. Table 14.2, I believe, is a big one there for some of the stretching and for the core stability, I mean. So take a look at those. Some of the common ones that are used most often and that are proper to be used now. Also the stretches, common stretches that we can utilize to be able to increase flexibility. And also keep in mind that strength training can also perform and end up improving the flexibility just as much as those flexibility exercises. Again, however, like I say all the time, it still has its place. In athletics, it might not have as much place. And I'm talking even in quarantine, I have people going by with mufflers that should probably be replaced. Man, I just completely lost my train of thought. I'm just not even sure exactly where I'm going with this. Anyway, I just completely lost my train of thought. I'm just going to sum this video up by saying stretching, static stretching. Oh, that's where it was. Oh my goodness, I just remembered. Okay, static stretching. I'm talking specifically about static stretching. Static stretching is not as beneficial as what we once thought it was. Now, it is still beneficial. It still has its place, but maybe not as beneficial as what it once was. So, the dynamic type of stretching is the most beneficial. While you are moving, you are also stretching at the same time. So it could be maybe an exaggerated type of movement. That's the stuff that we want. We don't want the static stretching nearly as much anymore. And in fact, they're getting rid of it in a lot of the athletics. A lot of strength conditioning coaches are not doing it now. It used to be, even though the research was showing that it wasn't that beneficial and it was actually maybe hindering performance, they were still doing it. Ugh. But we've kind of caught up with that. The reason, and I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here because this chapter lends itself to this little bit of a tangent. The reason I believe that we had the static stretching all the way from, I don't even know when it even started. It probably started hundreds of years ago. Who knows? I think the reason we continued to do it, even up to really even now, there's still high school coaches that are still making their athletes static stretch right before a game or right before practice. They're still making them do it, or having them stretch right before they're trying to exert some type of maximal force. And we're talking about static stretching now. Talking about static stretching is that they believe it is the premier warm-up exercise. Run a lap and then do a whole bunch of hamstring stretches. That's usually what ends up happening. They do one of the stretches that is not necessarily recommended anymore, which is the toe touch, standing toe touch. And then they also probably do the hurdler stretch. They may even do the little neck roll thing going on. The reason they probably did it is because their coach did it, and their coach did it probably because their coach did it. And then their coach did it because their coach did it. So it's almost kind of like the progression of, oh, my pappy did it, and my grandpappy did it, and my great grandpappy did it, so I'm going to do it too. So it just progressed into, you do what you normally, or you do what you've been taught, and you get stuck in this little bit of a rut. And that's where we don't progress with maybe some of the scientific literature. So the scientific literature shows that static stretching can hinder performance. The dynamic stretching could be beneficial. So again, all stretching is not created equal. The dynamic stretching, far more beneficial than any static stretching that can be performed. However, again, static stretching still has its place. It can still be performed properly. It can still be performed and still have good results, especially maybe even for older individuals. But for athletes and younger people, might not be nearly as beneficial, at least as what we once thought. But to sum this up, the core stability is also a key factor here. Being able to strengthen the core and maintain good posture throughout the day, that is a very, very important factor. Using Swiss balls, using medicine balls, doing planks, all that kind of stuff, that's what it's for. It's for increasing the core and increasing the stability within the core, to reduce low back pain, and also for the body to be able to resist some of those forces and be able to maintain their upright position without falling over. So anyway, that was the little bit of a rant there, but I don't really care. It's fun. It's good times. If you have any questions, if you have any comments or anything like that, leave them down below. If you don't, then maybe give a thumbs down. I don't know. I mean, you can basically do anything you want. It's YouTube, right? It's a free country. At least I think it is. Anyway, leave a comment, leave a like. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling now, and there's no more squirrels left in this room. So I will bid you adieu, and I thank you for watching.
Some call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade. Mm-hmm. Some call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Dude, that is tough, man. You can't be doing that and have a good throat afterward. Ain't gonna happen.